Welcome back to Show Me the Nuggets. I'm Eduardo Trinidad from the team at Digital Triggers. Thanks for tuning in. Today's episode will be a recap of the top takeaways of Q1, featuring interviews from Energetic Marketing's Mike Gore-Hickman, Tyler Sullivan, the founder of BombTech Golf, content marketing specialist Nate Turner of 10Speed, FB Ads expert Nihal Kazim of AdPros, and Instagram influencer, founder of SVG Media, Lo Silva. Here we go.
Nobody really has that concept of minimum effective dose. It's just like, we're going to do all this stuff. We're going to serve all these people. We're going to do all these different services. We're going to choose all these different niches. And I tell people, I feel like till I'm blue in the face, like, man, you got to pick a niche. Like, you're really smart. You got a good thing going on. You built a great, for all intensive purposes, like general agency business. But the reason like you haven't really moved the mark for the last 2 years is because you haven't picked a lane. It's no wonder. What would you tell somebody in that scenario, like being there and going through that experience firsthand?
Man, I've seen so many agencies, like generalist agencies, offer everything to everyone. Like on their websites, it's almost like a status symbol for some people. It's like, oh, I can offer SEO and PPC and Facebook ads and websites, and I'll mow your lawn for you too, right? And if you're in that spot right now, 100% of the time, you're going to be absolutely buried in client work. You get a client, you fulfill on their website and then set up their SEO and then whatever else. And then once you're done fulfilling for that client, it's like, okay, let's start looking for the next client. It makes sense on the high level. You're like, hey, if I offer more services, I'm going to get more customers. But that's not really the way that it actually works. It's counterintuitive. It's like, you need to pick one type of customer, offer one service, productize that service. So basically like give it your own spin. So you're not just selling PPC, you're not just selling SEO or Facebook ads, like you actually call it something like your, the Nuggets method or whatever. And then sell that one specific product to that one specific person, because that's you solving a problem. You're going to get, that's how you really scale anything. Cause if you ever watch that McDonald's movie, what's it called? The Founder.
Yep.
They got mad at their El Paso franchise because they're selling like bean burritos.
Yep.
and Ray's like, you can't do this. You got to sell burger, fries, drinks, and shakes. And if you can perfect that, like they obviously scaled and they're huge. But if you can just solve one problem for one person, not only is your fulfillment going to be a lot easier and you're not going to be buried in work, but your sales and marketing is going to be so much easier, so much more streamlined, and you can start setting up automated systems. Like I have automated customer success email follow-ups. I have onboarding email automation. I have marketing email automation. None of that would be possible if I was a generalist offering different solutions to different people.
That makes perfect sense. So when you think about minimum effective dose, and specifically in your agency, like what are the big things that you work on, right? Like if you took like 80-20 Pareto's principle and you applied it to itself, I think that's 96-4, right? Like that's what you do such a good job with, I feel, is like you don't let like shiny object syndrome get to you near as much. I'm sure it still does, but near as much as most agencies, and you're really focused on a couple of things. I think you do those things really well, and you let the rest just be as is. So if you were giving me advice saying, Joe, if you can just focus on these 3 or these 4 things, what are those things that you think are the big levers?
Yeah, that's a good question. And yeah, really important, probably the most important one. Number one is like and as much as agency owners hate hearing this, you have to pick a niche. Right? You just absolutely have to pick a niche, pick a service delivery. And basically the way that you pick a service delivery is like, out of all of the different services for this one niche, what's the one thing that's going to move the needle the most for them? Right? Is it PPC? Is it Facebook ads? Is it SEO? Is it a website? Is it whatever it is? Doesn't matter. What is going to move the needle the most for those people? And then really just focus all your energy and time on finding more people to sell this one solution to. And also being able to say no. If a customer comes to you and outside of your niche and they're like, hey, can you help with Like I had a customer come to me, and I know nothing about real estate leads. He's like, hey, can you help my agency, real estate agents or real estate broker get more home leads? Like they're ready to pay some serious money, and they heard about you somewhere. And I was like, I mean, hey, it would be nice to have an extra, 3K recurring, but at what cost?
So there's a lot of people, obviously, that have been retail, that have been very much in person selling things, and now we're wanting to make a shift to as they would say, digital and e-commerce, and have never been there before. And you come from a unique background because you were never there before either, right? Like you kind of got in by pure happenstance and just kind of stumbled into it, fell into it. What advice would you give to somebody that's in golf right now, or in something, but in a more traditional sense, local sense, physical sense, and now is looking to make the shift into digital? What would your advice be?
I used to have these conversations like way pre-pandemic, and every time I did with someone that had like a traditional store, like my parents used to have a diner. So I'd be like, yo, let's get some emails, let's do a giveaway, let's send an email like free coffee or whatever. And they did, and like the one time they actually did it, they crushed. They were super busy. And to transition that online, it's one of those things where like if you told me in 2012 I shouldn't ship the clubs myself, I'd say you're dumb. You're wrong. So it's like I think everyone has to have their own epiphany, and this is kind of it. And I think it's probably a hard transition. I can't get back in that mindset if I'm all in person. That's all I know of how to even do that. But I think you got to go. I think the ones that pivot and really embrace it are going to win. But I feel like it's not one that they're embracing, at least from what I've seen, with zealous. They're not like, yeah, let's go all online. They still are waiting for it to come back. I don't know, because I have never had a traditional retail store, but I mean, it is what it is. It's all online. And I was all online before. So I think it's just embrace it quicker than later. And those that can adapt and move are going to win. So, I mean, learn how to do email marketing, get all your current customers, send them handwritten notes, and say, hey man, we really appreciate you as a customer. I know you've been in the store before. We're going all online. Here's our new website. Here's a coupon or something. I don't know what that is. Or like, hey, can we get your email, and start building that list and make it. I mean, with Shopify and Klaviyo, anyone can launch a website right now, like pretty easily, which was not the case when I started. So I think doing stuff that probably takes some effort, like move slow now to move fast later. So do stuff that kind of sucks, like call every one of your customers. I mean, how many customers do you have in traditional retail? Maybe 1,000, 500, 2,000. I'd call them up like, hey, it's Steve from whatever, the store downtown. Really appreciate your past business, man. We just launched a new website. We're delivering direct to you. We're whatever. Love just to get your feedback, get your input, or tell me what you want, and have those candid conversations, and make that transition. I would do the stuff that doesn't scale to then make it scale.
Yeah, got to hustle first. Yeah, get it working, build some momentum. Makes perfect sense.
I'm sure that most of the podcast listeners, if not like quite all, have heard of Sprout Social. You obviously were the first marketer ever at Sprout Social and helped lead the inbound marketing and really helped spearhead that revenue growth, or at least a big part of it, going from 0 to 100K, and then to 20 plus million, and then to over 100 million in revenue, and then to their IPO. I'd love to hear about what you think kind of the 80-20 was of the content marketing initiative. What was the big things, not kind of the traditional title tags, meta tags? What were kind of the big things that led to that growth in terms of content marketing?
Yeah. So the very first iteration of the blog was actually a little bit more of like kind of like quasi news site. So almost like a Mashable type of look at like social and what's happening. It was such an emerging space. And then when the editor of that left, probably like 2 years in or so, I took over ownership of the blog and the team. And there was really kind of a well-rounded effort within all of marketing, but that's where we really started to shift into a lot of, much more like SEO content and specifically creating content on topics to be, thorough and ranking. And I would say that, 80/20 from content marketing standpoint was really, understanding our audience, and not just, we could write about social media topics, but it really was understanding that our audience was social media marketers, it was digital marketers, it was people in agencies. And so understanding kind of everything that they had on their plate, which is not just, tweeting or engaging on a social platform. It's multi-channel, it's understanding, it's measuring, the impact, all of that stuff. And so really understanding the broader audience led to topics that weren't necessarily totally tied to our product, but really were still helpful to our audience. So built a lot of authority and trust there. And then also, some of the co-marketing stuff we were able to do with other companies across, Zendesk and Unbounce and companies that were sort of tangential to what we did, but very much relevant to a digital marketer who's responsible for a lot of stuff. So I think that was huge, just kind of not limiting ourselves to that one topic, but really understanding our audience better, and then catering to everything that they cared about.
Gotcha. Yeah. So kind of going full circle, so to speak, on everything that they think about, they care about, what, really dominating the conversation, not just on social, but everything that they would be thinking about. And then you said something interesting. You talked about partners, right? And collaborating with other brands. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that meant, Nate?
Yeah. Yeah. So the way we really approached it was, we know that social ties into a lot of places. So like, for Facebook ads, like there's the social ads and there's landing pages. And so like, that was an easy one. For like partnering up with Unbounce, they do so much with ads and landing pages. Social is a big channel for customer service and customer care. So that's another area we can kind of branch into. So really it was kind of looking at who some of the leaders were in those spaces. Wistia, we did one with them for video, and like video and social and how that works together. And so the goal was always create a ton of value for our audience and prospects and customers, like by essentially going and finding the experts in those areas, and then crafting topics that would overlap with social and make it relevant to our audience, but also really just educating and making them better. So that was not just blog content, but the co-marketing, like webinars or guides we would do together, anything like that. And then some of the other like research content that the marketing team was doing, like always just trying to find ways to be a resource and make people better at their jobs and add value that way.
So it sounds like then AdPros does a lot more than just ads, right? Kind of full funnel, if you will. If you're doing the services that you also run through in that scorecard, is that right?
Man, before we used to do like business coaching, like basically business strategy, financial management, like all of that is integrated into what we're doing, because otherwise we're just BSing ourselves. And so we don't charge extra for that. It's like for us is a non-negotiable in order to operate. And so that's just how we go about it. Should we be charging extra probably. Like our sheets and the way that we do stuff and how we make decisions is almost always radically different than how decisions are made right now. And that is a critical part of having the clarity in order to figure out if you're pacing correctly or not, what adjustments to make, and then if you're actually going to hit those goals or not. And we know way before the entrepreneur does.
That's awesome. Yeah, man, I think that's so key. I think in this day and age, if you want to keep clients long-term and really be able to serve them, you have to go full service like that, because otherwise you're going to just churn them nonstop.
Yeah.
When they're going through those growth stages and they've never been there before, like it's difficult. When we just first started to scale this funnel, I know, like I was talking with one of our advisors that runs a very similar funnel. And he's like, what's the cost per sale? And I'm like, $1,500. He's like, great. It should be $2,000. And I'm like, what? He's like, it should be $2,000. Pay $2,000. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's $1,500 and I want it less. He's like, no, Like, spend more money, make it $2,000. Like, well,
Right.
no. But now I get it. Like, it's taken the emotion out of the sale. Like, cost per sale being $2,000, like that's easy. All right, like now it's easy to scale. It took all the stress out of managing that and looking at the stats every day is gone. And that's just like one little tweak. So without that, like I would be a mess every day looking at the stats, and we're only spending like, a little under 1,000 a day. I can't imagine somebody spending, 300 grand a month or, 200 grand a month.
No,
that's
it's
critical.
very real. It's very real. So for example, like the way I look at this is like it starts with me. Outside of me is like all the families and stuff inside of AdPros. Outside of that is all of the entrepreneurs. Outside of that is all of their families and inventory and people who manage that whole ecosystem. So when we're able to execute, the amount of lives that are actually touched indirectly, not including customers, is pretty significant. And when we have breakthroughs, there's a lot of good stuff that happens.
I know that working with influencers, you ended up creating this C4 method. Can you talk a little bit about what the heck that is and why it's important?
Yeah, so influencers kind of made me realize basically the reason I created it is because we were making so much money with some of them and sending them like $100,000 a month checks just for them that they stopped working. They're going to Hawaii, they're doing this and that. I was like, man, like we still need content. So I was like, you know what, out of spite, because I'm kind of weird like that, I was like, I'm just going to become an influencer and prove to these guys that it's not a big deal. That way it'll also help me when I sell people. Like, listen, I'm an influencer too. It's not that crazy. And so I created this method. It's C4, which stands for content, conversations, community, and conversions. And this works really, really well if you're doing high ticket. It also works for e-com, but for high ticket, let's talk about that more. Really, content is something you need to be creating in everything. Like I've been doing a lot of stuff right now on Clubhouse. I'm doing TikTok. I'm driving all that into my Instagram, and they're seeing more content. You get to know, like, trust me, it's the influencer angle, right? With everyone, you're an influencer because you're a creator, you're creating content. Then I take that into conversations. I move people from that into DMs. I use opportunities inside of Instagram, such as like polls and questions. And I reach out to people. Hey, I saw you voted in my poll. Hey, come reach back out. Like if you're interested in this and this, it starts the conversation. If they're not ready to engage into an application or something, I move them into a community, whether it's a close friends group on Insta, which it's the little, like the green thing, or you can move it into a Facebook group, email list, whatever the case, it's a community nonetheless, right? Give me your cell phone number. There's actually a texting tool now called Community, which is just texting, right? And so if you have all those three things, you're consistently giving content, you're having communication with people. Communication is the new form of currency nowadays. Everyone wants to talk, everyone wants to see. It's less like, just buy this, here it is. Like, why? Who are you? Like, why should I do it, right? So you have content, communication. If you build a community, you have a rabid amount of the same people in the same space, giving you testimonials, showing results, like really verifying and edifying you. And then conversions is just easy. Like you don't have to worry about it because you've put all the time into these three buckets that when you're ready to make a sale, people are ready to engage with you and sell or apply to work with your stuff. They already know you. The sales calls go from like an hour of like fake discovery. You're like, tell me why this is hard for you and what would this mean to your life? To like, listen, you know what it is. This is what it is. This is how much it costs. You ready to go? I'm ready to go, bro. Let's do this.
Perfect.
Thanks for tuning in and Show Me the Nuggets. If you've been enjoying the podcast and find our content helpful, please visit our Apple Podcast page, hit the subscribe button, and leave us a review. Joe and the whole team have been working hard to bring more value to the show. Your feedback will go a long way in helping us make the show better and reach a wider audience.